Hi, I'm Chris Colvin. I'm the founder of In the House. We're a community for innovative in-house counsel to gather and share information and expertise with each other. You can find out more about us at www.inthehouse.org. One of the things we do is our monthly cybersecurity and privacy working group meeting. We bring leaders from the cybersecurity community and interview them. I'm really excited today to have Joseph V. DeMarco as our guest. He's an expert in cybersecurity and privacy law and related areas. I'm also really glad to be here with my co-host, David Heckler. He's the editor of the TAG Cyber Law Journal, formerly Cyber Insecurity News. And David and I have been working together, I guess it's approaching 2 years now. We really have incredible guests every month. We now have almost 2 years of recorded broadcasts. So it's a real wealth of information and expertise from a whole variety of leaders in this field. So without further ado, I'd like to invite David to sort of take over the discussion. One last heads up, I am going to be muting folks, so to avoid background noise again. So mute yourself, but if you have a question, absolutely unmute yourself and feel free to ask questions. So David, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Chris. I will say that we're going to open it up to questions periodically, and we will unmute everybody if that works okay. Sometimes there's something going on, dogs barking, mailmen deliver, in which case we go, oh, but we will make every effort to give you an opportunity to ask questions periodically during this 50-minute session. Thanks, Chris. And I just want to say hello. You know, this is the first broadcast we've had during a very different time in our lives here in New York and the lives of all of you in this country and wherever. Some of you are from actually outside of this country. You know, we have a representative from Europe here right now. Anyway, I hope you're all safe, and I know we are socially distancing, and in that sense we are modeling proper behavior, and I hope you can relax during our time together and enjoy it. It's important that we be human as we continue. We share our feelings together and support each other. And if people want to bring up other issues related to working remotely that aren't exactly on point here, please feel free to do that. If we can't open up the discussion to something that might be bothering you or something you're worried about, who can? So I encourage you to, use us as a resource. That's what we're trying to do. That's, I know, what Chris's organization in the House is trying to do, and certainly what I'm trying to do at TAG Cyber Law Journal as well. Speaking of which, there is an article that Joseph DeMarco wrote on this very subject that we have on our website right now, and it will be posted along with this video soon on our Working House group page on In the House. Okay, so let me introduce Joseph V. DeMarco more formally, and then I'm going to sort of ask questions that will mirror what he discussed in his article. So Joseph DeMarco is the founding partner of DeVore DeMarco LLP, which is a boutique law firm practicing exclusively in the law of data privacy and security and cybercrime prevention and response. From 1997 to 2007, Joe was Assistant United States Attorney in Manhattan, where he led the computer hacking and intellectual property program. And his contact information is at the bottom of the article he wrote, which again, you can find at tag-cyber.com, and will be on the website that we have. So, welcome, Joe. Thank you for being with us. And we moved this session up. We're usually, as some of you know, on the second Thursday of every month. We moved it up to the first Thursday because this is too important to wait. We're all working from home, I think, or most of us are. And that's not a new experience for some people, many of us. But working a day or two every now and then from home is very different than working full-time from home for the foreseeable future, both as individuals, as employees, but also it's really important. Some of you are in-house lawyers at big companies, and it's really important that employers think about this in a new way, because your employees who are working from home are the new vulnerabilities, the new risk factors you need to compute, you need to work into your business plan. And if you don't know all the ways that you're vulnerable, you will very soon. So, Joe, why don't we start with, well, I want to start with Zoom. You know, we're using Zoom because it's a really convenient and very efficient way to work together. And it's much better technically, you know, as far as I can see. You know, I do GoToMeeting, I do, you know, WebEx, I do a lot of these different software programs. And this is so much more, it's better than it was 2 years ago when we started. It's just so much more efficient, and it's so much more professional, you know. And I know that TV news is doing Zoom interviews right there on the screen, you know, live and streaming. And it's just, there's a reason why they use Zoom. It's much better. And it's, you know, sometimes the sync is a little off, but not as often as it used to be. So we're grateful for that. But if you think that Zoom is really secure, you haven't heard about Zoom bombing, and you haven't experienced breaches, and Zoom itself has experienced breaches. So anyway, there are vulnerabilities that you need to be aware of, especially if you were thinking that you could maybe conduct a session with a client and feel like there's confidentiality that you can rely on. That would not be a good idea. Anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just felt like, especially now, we need to underscore that there are vulnerabilities for all of us using Zoom, whatever way we're using it. I do, once a week, I'm doing a happy hour with my college group, and I think we're not so worried about vulnerabilities there. But anyway.
Depends how much you drink. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
In fact, if you have a drink and we're a lunch hour here, you're welcome to share it with us. Oh, is that a product here? Is that product placement there? Okay, I'm sorry. So, Joe, let's start with unsecured personal and public Wi-Fi networks. What can you tell us about the vulnerability there?
Sure. So let me start by thanking Chris, David, and the entire team at In the House for organizing this. I've seen some of their other presentations. Chris and I have known each other for years, and got to know David quite well over the last couple of weeks, and they really do a great job and provide enormous value. So thank you to them, and thank you all for attending. I know that many of you, notwithstanding the stay-at-home orders that are in place in various states, have enormously busy schedules and kids nipping at your heels, and perhaps older parents you're worried about. So thank you for attending. Just a couple of caveats. My remarks today are my own. They're not on behalf of any of my clients, past or current. As you know from my bio, I worked in government for a number of years. I ran the cybercrime unit at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan. And what I've seen in my practice over the last month or so, of course, is what you've all seen too, which is the largest mass migration of a workforce in human history, right? In no other circumstance or case have you seen entire global populations move from work in physical office spaces to work from home or remote. And as many of us, already know, we previously did work from home sometimes, even if we were just on our iPhone at night. But this is a qualitative and a quantitative change. And I liken it to, two examples from my own experience. One, when I just started the firm back in the 2012-2013 timeframe. A few years after that, we had Superstorm Sandy, and I vividly remember sitting in my car in the driveway because we had no electricity, charging my, 2013 era iPhone on the cigarette lighter charger and running my office really from my iPhone. And I remember back to 9/11 when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, working on phones, physical phones that were donated to us by AT&T, since our phone connections at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which was in Lower Manhattan, were severed. For about 2 months, I worked on a donated AT&T old-fashioned flip phone to conduct my business. David's, starting with Zoom is completely appropriate. And it really highlights the fact that as we do work from home, there are a range of security issues and privacy issues that we need to be concerned about. We'll probably talk a little bit about Zoom in a little bit, but let me get right to David's question first, which is, again, perhaps obvious to most people on the call, perhaps not obvious, but if you're working from home, you may very well be working from a home Wi-Fi router. And home Wi-Fi routers pose security risks. Not all of them are password protected. Not all of them are using encrypted forms of transmission of data. And you can enable that. You can enable a strong password, and you should. And you should enable what's called WPA2, which is, generally speaking, a much more secure form of communication. Because what you want to avoid is some bad guy picking up your Wi-Fi communications, which will then give them insight into what those communications are. And you also want to be cognizant of the fact that you should not be using other people's Wi-Fi, which may not be secure as well. I go out for a walk every evening. I live in the suburbs, and as I walk the block, I'm picking up a whole bunch of people's Wi-Fis, and most of them are not locked, and I could hop onto them. If I could hop onto them, what that means is they could monitor my traffic, and while I trust my neighbors, I'm never quite sure whether those networks are theirs or not. So again, just kind of an obvious point, don't use unsecure Wi-Fi, secure your own Wi-Fi, don't enable your devices to automatically join any network that they can grab onto. Make sure they're configured so that you have to, specifically opt into the joining of a network. Put your own home router in the middle of your home, may give you some better Wi-Fi and may make it less likely that people can get onto your Wi-Fi connections. And if you can use a wired connection to your internet router, which is what I'm doing right now, use a wired connection. I mean, just because you have Wi-Fi, if the router is next to you, as it is in my home office, doesn't mean that you need to use Wi-Fi. And that's not just kind of good technology advice, it's also good legal advice, because as lawyers, we have duties. We have duties that pertain to us, whether or not we're in the office or at home. We have legal duties set forth by various statutes that sometimes, trickle down to us on behalf of our clients if they're in regulated entities. But we also have ethical duties. We have ethical duties of competence. We have to be able to competently perform our job. We have ethical duties of confidentiality, obligations to keep our client confidential communications secure. And we have the ethical obligation to safeguard client property, which includes intellectual property. And I know, we could do a whole session on attorney ethics, but, just don't think that because you are not yourself working for a hospital or a defense contractor or an SEC regulated entity that you have no duties. All the duties that pertain to you as lawyers from the canons of professional responsibility apply in full force to your work at home. And I will tell you, having represented lawyers who've had data breaches, and I do that with a disturbing amount of frequency, I will tell you that the law really doesn't care where you had a data breach. It doesn't care if you had a data security incident in your office or on the road or at home. The same laws and consequences apply, your same obligations apply. And if you do lose client information, and that includes personally identifiable information, whether it's at home or in the office, you may have a duty to report that to those clients, to regulators, and to affected third parties. So, again, just using home Wi-Fi as any good place to start, as good as a place to start to gain a window of insight into this issue. Just keep that core legal principle in mind.
One quick addition to that question. As summer approaches, often we talk about airports, but in fact, airports are a big part of many lawyers' lives other than right now. But it seems worth asking, what about lawyers who have layovers for 4 hours and, they want to connect and
Sure.
they have lots of work to do. How dangerous is that as a proposition?
Sure. So happily, technology provides vulnerabilities, but also provides solutions. Happily, there are many mobile applications that allow for secured VPN, virtual private network communications back into your office. So if you do have a long layover, or you simply have to work remotely from some public place, you do have some options. One option is to not use that open Wi-Fi. The second option is to secure through a virtual private network through, for example, your cell phone connection, right? So if you don't have to always use Wi-Fi, you can use your regular data plan, your cell phone data plan. And if you connect through your cell phone data plan through a virtual private network riding on your cell phone data plan, then it's not much different than working on your iPhone through your cell phone plan in your office. So that's another example. The areas where I see lawyers kind of, mess up, to be quite honest, is, what I call the trifecta, which is the lawyer that's using a personal laptop, which is not centrally managed by their IT department or by their business, and is outdated and is not running current antivirus, anti-malware protections. And they're in an airport using what they think is the airport Wi-Fi, but is really a bad guy who just set up, LGA hotspot at LaGuardia Airport. And they're using their Yahoo email account to transmit sensitive client information because going through the firm secure portal was too cumbersome. And, to me, that's kind of, bordering on, walking malpractice. But I have seen incidents, and I have had occasion to represent lawyers where trying to sort out in that exact scenario how the data entrusted to them was lost is no easy task. But that kind of gives you a picture of, what not to do.
Can I ask a quick follow-up that's related to what David asked? So I'm an engineer turned lawyer, so I've always been interested in the intersection of law and technology, but I think in many cases lawyers are not necessarily technology leaders. However, it occurs to me based on what you just said, Joseph, that we're almost in an era where if you do not have a certain level of technological savvy as a lawyer, you could be exposing yourself to ethical issues, and you could be exposing your clients to problems. And we're supposed to be providing solutions to our clients, not generating problems. So do you think that do you think it's important to recognize that lawyers really have an obligation to develop technological savvy and keep up with the times? And if so, what are some of the specific suggestions you'd have for lawyers that maybe are a little further behind the curve?
Sure. So it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. The good news is, because cybercrime and cybersecurity has blossomed as a problem. Remember, I've been doing this area of law for over 20 years. And so I remember what it was like in 1997 when the internet as we know it was born. But because the problem has blossomed, easy off-the-shelf solutions have blossomed too. So for example, one of the best ways to increase, let's say, the security of your webmail account, and I'll just use that, your personal webmail account, is to enable two-factor authentication, which every major provider of webmail, Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, allows. You just go to security settings and follow the menus, and it'll bring you to a page where it says, do you want to enable two-factor authentication? Which simply means that before someone changes your password or resets your password, you've configured it so that you get a text message to your cell phone. So that if, in the middle of the day, your cell phone buzzes and, it says, do you want to change your Yahoo password? You could quickly say, no, I don't, right? So the solutions that are out there are actually, you almost kind of have to try hard not to use them. And that's just one example. It's also the case that even small businesses are rolling out and using products like Go to My PC and Log Me In, which create, and I'm brand neutral, I'm just mentioning those as examples, which create abilities to have secure communications. And look, it's also the case that our clients are demanding it. If you do, let's say, mortgage refi work for a bank, and that's a pretty, you would think, low-tech area of law. It's not engineering, it's not cyber law, it's not IT. You're just kind of doing mortgage refi work for your local bank, they're going to push down security obligations on you that the OCC or let's say, for example, New York State Department of Financial Services push down on them. So you'll be dragged kicking and screaming into the zone of better security. The point is, why not just get ahead of it?
Right. One other quick tip that you reminded me of is there's a great product category. I won't mention any names of vendors for the reasons you identified, but there's a great category called a password vault where they generate 25 character or larger random passwords for all the various subscriptions a lawyer might have in their practice. And those are not that hard to use once you learn how to use them, and they're extremely secure. So that's a relatively easy thing to do, and I learned the ropes in a couple of weeks, and they actually can be convenient because once you memorize the complicated master password, they can be used on different devices in different places. So just another quick tip that is not that hard, but is a big step up in security.
Great point.
I'm gonna, before I open it up to see if we have any questions yet, I'm gonna just raise another home issue that is worth talking about, I think. I can't remember the name of the company, but there was a company that suffered a big breach and they couldn't figure out what caused it. And they figured out that it had something to do with the CEO's computer, his home computer. And after a while, and the CEO said, wait, I practice, I'm really careful. I don't click on, phishing attack, potential attacks. I'm sure that, I rarely use it for, and what they figured out is that one night he was out at a party and his son, who admired his computer because of its speed, and decided he was going to stream this game. And because he'd been getting invitations to stream the game. So he went to his dad's computer and he started streaming the game, and presto changeo, that game was, malware, full of malware. And the whole idea was to get this kid to get on the network, but he actually used his father's computer, which gave them instant access to all this stuff. But
right.
even a kid who's on the network, the family network, can be a potential problem. But the kid who's pretty savvy and uses his dad's computer when the dad's out can cause huge harm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, the issue you highlight is significant. People at one end of the spectrum may be working from home systems that their office has set up and is centrally managing. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got attorneys, working on their daughter's 9-year-old daughter's 2000 era gateway computer. You also have the kids and family members using, mom or dad's computer because it's, maybe better, faster, newer. The kids in my house, I've got 2 little ones, they don't have the password to my computer. And they know that they are never to touch daddy's work computer. And I give it to my wife, but I stand over her shoulder when she's using it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's a key point. You also, who knows what they're plugging in terms of thumb drives. Data hygiene is a huge point. Again, you could spend a whole hour on that as well. But I see thumb drives and I crush them. We don't use thumb drives in my business. And because I'm terrified that, I'll have a client document that gets thrown on a thumb drive and, my daughter needs a thumb drive for a project and it's in her backpack and the kids, now it's shared at the school and, who knows what kid brings it home and plugs it into their parents' laptop and it's out the door. So great point. Don't share toothbrushes or laptop computers is my advice.
It's sort of like washing your hands regularly. It's kind of like one virus, maybe the solution to the virus we're all thinking about. There are analogies to avoiding the viruses around the corner on the little piece of plastic. Does anyone have a question? Maybe we should unmute everyone for a second. And
yeah, if you want, I'll do that, David. I'll unmute all, and but I will probably quickly remute if the background noise is too bad. It's pretty bad. Okay. Anybody have a question?
Hi, have a question.
Yeah, I'm
I
going
hear
to
the horror.
let me remute Kathy, and then you can
Okay.
unmute yourself. This is one of the challenges of work from home when you have these meetings. So go ahead.
I worry about my laptop, getting hijacked. I mean, that usually happens when you click on a phishing thing or something in an email, right? Are there other ways that that can happen?
Oh, sorry, Joseph is muted from the mute. There, I got you. Oh,
Okay. So yeah, that's the most likely scenario. There are also what are known as watering hole attacks. You may go to a website that you think is a real website, but it's not. But overwhelmingly, the most likely infection vector for someone working at home, on a otherwise patched and virus and anti-malware updated machine, is the human factor, because you can have all the protections of the world, but if you click on that link, it's going to be a problem to protect yourself. I always recommend that people do not click on anything unless they know what's coming in and they expect it, that they hover over the sender's email address to just see what pops up when they do that. The worst comes to worst, if you don't click on something and it is legitimate, is the person might write back to you or they'll call you, and it's perfectly okay for them to call you. It's also perfectly okay for you to call them and say, did you send me X? The universe will not slip from its axis if you don't open something that looks a little weird to you.
Right.
So they can get you from links and attachments, right, in the email. Can they ever get you just by opening the email?
Good question.
Usually not. Usually simply by opening an email. Usually not. Usually you have to do something else other than open the email. That said, I don't even bother opening emails that that I'm not expecting or look weird.
Yeah, that's so true. And there's a lot of, so one quick tip that I've sort of learned just through my own background is that the link you see in an email can be made different. It's very easy. Any child can do it. You can make the actual link different from the apparent link, if that makes sense. So it could say, www. Companyname.com, but then it's easy to link that to an actual different link that could be a phishing link. So another really easy thing to do that I've tried to, sort of good hygiene, good data hygiene, if you will, to reference David's point, just go to a browser and retype the proper URL that is that you're trying to get to. So, and even if it's from a provider you use, there's all kinds of phishing that goes out that appears to be from, various big companies that most of us have subscriptions with. I won't mention any names, but so just retype, go to your browser and do it the old fashioned way, the way we did way back in the 90s when we were getting started, right? And it's a good old fashioned way to protect yourself. You don't need to click even legitimate links, even if you're really confident it's legitimate. Why not go to your browser, take the extra 2 seconds to retype it? So that's one thing that I've suggested to a lot of people that seems to work. Can I ask another technical question though, Joseph? I know you're a lawyer, but why haven't we figured out a tech fix for this whole click the link problem? Why can't the geniuses in Silicon Valley figure out a way so that clicking a phishing link doesn't expose you to all these hackers?
Yeah. Well, to some degree, large enterprises have in some respects started to do that, insofar as your spam filter, not letting it through to begin with. Some organizations will also, if a link does fire up some malware, contain that to the person's device or not let it beacon out to suspect IP addresses. But at the end of the day, the way the internet is configured and architected, it almost has to let people do things that the system doesn't want. At the end of the day, we've opted for pilot control as opposed to automated control, which obviously leads to pilot error. So
there are companies that don't allow employees to click on links.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not convenient. It requires workarounds, but that is clearly more secure than what most companies have now, at a price. Okay, one of the points that you raised in your article is the danger of transferring corporate data using personal email accounts.
Mm-hmm.
What's the real danger there?
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, you should really not be using free webmail accounts for sensitive client business. And I do mean sensitive client business. I mean, if you want to, send a client a birthday greeting by Gmail, that's fine. The issue really is, the areas where I see lawyers get into trouble is they will, for whatever reason, convenience sake or whatever, they're going to, a family event in Europe, and they know they won't be able to, or they're worried whether they're going to be able to access their work computers remotely because, who knows, whatever reason. So they'll just send the day before they go a bunch of stuff to their Yahoo account or to a Gmail account. And then they log in from, the hotel Wi-Fi, and the hotel business center computer or a relative's computer. Those are multiple errors right there. I think, what was the Yahoo breach? Like, how many millions of people or billions of users, credentials were compromised in the Yahoo breach? I mean, my wife uses a free webmail service, and I just tell her, assume everything in there is compromised. And we don't put anything important in there. It's mainly family chit chat. So that's kind of a key issue there. And no matter how many times you tell attorneys not to do it, because attorneys don't like to be told what to do, they still do that. Again, it's a stream of steady business for me. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have it, but it is a source of breaches that is preventable. And the other thing too about it is, it's very hard. It's easy to explain to a client if your law firm was targeted by, Russian intelligence or the Chinese security services for a targeted, focused hack. It's easy to explain that, you couldn't fend that off. It's really hard to explain to a client that the reason, you lost their fill in the blank, whatever it is, super confidential information is because, you sent it to your own personal Yahoo account instead of just staying on your firm network. It's a conversation you don't want to have with a client.
And the corollary there,
let alone a judge. So
deleting corporate data from personal accounts later, if you did send something to a personal account and you've done some work on it and it's just sitting there, that creates an opportunity that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, delete. I mean, lawyers are pack rats too. So if you already said I'm in the position of asking for forgiveness, not permission, what I would say to you is go to those accounts, put everything in the trash box, and then empty the trash.
Right.
Good.
I think Victor Lee has a question. I saw a hand go up. So
good.
You just need to unmute yourself to ask a question.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, David. Joseph, these are great insights. So I have a question for you. So certainly you don't want to make an unforced error, right? But at the same time, I guess, can you give a sense of like what's good enough or not good enough? Because in some situations there's standards, right? Like the financial situation you mentioned, or there's HIPAA regulations, or there's NIST, 800-171. But if you don't fall in those categories,
sure,
how much can you do, or how much you have to do to say, look, I did the best I could, so I should be okay. Some sort of safe harbor.
Yeah, well, right. Unfortunately, there is no formal safe harbor. It's a great question. I would say the following. Bare minimum, make sure your home Wi-Fi is protected with a complex password. Make sure that it's running WPA2. Make sure that your laptop is a dedicated work laptop. And even if it's a shared one, maybe for the next month, you throw the kids off of it. And that it's running up-to-date antivirus, anti-malware protections. That it's obviously connected to a router, and that your laptop is itself, the desktop or whatever computer you're using at home, is protected by a complex password that only you know the password to. I would also say, as to any service that you use, where it enables you to increase the security settings, increase those security settings. So, for example, if you are using well, I mean, virtually any app or any service that you use will enable you to use two-factor authentication, enable that two-factor authentication. Use complex passwords wherever you can. Make sure that if you're using a laptop, the hard disk is encrypted. Not just that the device is password protected, but that the hard disk is encrypted, which again, a lot of products and services are doing that by default. That way, if you run to the store or the pharmacy and you bring your laptop with you to do some work, maybe while waiting for the line to go down, and someone, when you finally get in, breaks into your car and steals your laptop, you don't have a reportable data breach. I mean, I would say those are kind of the constellation of things that, you know, if you do those things and do them religiously across the board, you know, the odds of you becoming a victim drop precipitously, not to zero, but to not do any of them and to not do more than one of them. You know, we have common law of negligence that comes into play. And as lawyers, we're fiduciaries, right? We're fiduciaries over our clients' information. So, you know, you tell me whether that's a breach of fiduciary duty or a standard of care. You know, I can argue it both ways as a litigator, but I think those are kind of the core issues you need to be most concerned about.
There's also a lot of great articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, not specifically for lawyers, that basically talk about good cybersecurity hygiene. And there's some excellent articles that say, you must do the following 10 things. So if you're a lawyer, it'd be nice to be able to point to that and say, I'm doing all 10 things that they recommend, you know, and you'll feel a better peace of mind if you do that. A related question I had, Joseph, about a specific thing that comes up in, I think, a lot of lawyers' practices, both in-house and outside, is texting. You know, that's a form of communication that's very commonplace these days for work as well as for personal matters. What about the various encrypted messaging apps that are out there? Do you think that that's a legitimate form of communication with clients, internal or external clients?
Sure. So I do have some clients that have asked me to use those encrypted apps. One, again, I'm not endorsing any, is Signal.
Mm-hmm.
And they're perfectly fine, perfectly good to use. They do offer enhanced protections. Sometimes they make sense, sometimes they don't make sense. So it's really, you know, I think that really what I think is most important is that you do, as a lawyer, a competent risk assessment, or if you don't feel you can do one yourself, you get someone who knows this stuff to help you with one. And that you have candid conversations with your clients about the level of security that, you know, that they need or want. You know, obviously for those of you that do real estate or trust and estates law or M&A or move money, you've already hopefully put in place protections which will guard against, you know, fraudulent wire transfers. But you have those conversations up front at the beginning of the relationship. One thing I do is I put into my engagement agreement a paragraph which says, you know, we will be using standard internet technologies and communication methodologies. If you require enhanced security, you know, you will let me know and we will deploy that at your expense. And I've had a few clients over the years who've said, you know, yes, we do need enhanced protections. And I have clients in the regulated industries, insurance, banking, hospitals, et cetera, that require me to do things, which we do anyway, so it's not a problem. So I think that's kind of how I would answer that question. Again, it's very fact specific. No platform is 100% secure. You can think you're using a secure service, and then the day after you sign up, you'll read about how there's a 0-day vulnerability associated with that service, et cetera, and so forth. You know, again, the key is, you know, you don't need to build to Lockheed standards or CIA or NSA standards, but you do need to be better than, you know, your average bear.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention an article on the TAG Cyber Law Journal homepage right now about a Chinese dissident who hired a firm to help with his application for asylum in the United States. It's well known, very rich real estate magnate. And he said, I've already been hacked by the Chinese government a lot. So you really need to protect all of our communications. I don't want them on your server. Okay, it will be done. So guess what? Their communication, including lots of his personal information and his whole asylum petition or application, was hacked, and the Chinese government, it's been found that it was the Chinese government, posted it in social media all over the place. They have a malpractice lawsuit against the law firm, and it just cleared a motion to dismiss. So there's an article about this on our homepage right now.
I'm
So
posting
it's not
that.
all, it's not just, you know, kind of theoretical or academic. I mean, it's now, it's here, it's now, it's happening. This is very unusual. A law firm doesn't usually say, we promise your stuff will never be hacked. And maybe a law firm should never do that.
Yeah. I just posted the
you have
link,
an
by the
opinion-
way, David, to that
you have an
article.
opinion about that, Joseph? Whether a law firm should never say, well, we promise that your data, whatever you give us, will never be hacked and it'll always be completely secure.
Yeah, I would hope the lawyers are not making those promises.
It doesn't make any sense because any law firm, any entity at all is going to use certain vendors, and those vendors, no matter how wealthy and well-funded, are Yahoo was a pretty large company at the time of that massive data breach, and then before they were acquired by Verizon. So it doesn't matter how big or tech savvy, anyone can be hacked. And like I've heard from so many cybersecurity experts that I don't care what your company is, it's a matter of when, not if, you'll be hacked. Because the bigger you are, the bigger a target you are. So in some ways, being big is good. You have funds to protect yourself, but in some ways, being big is bad because you're a big target. So
I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up for questions because we're getting close to when we usually end. VPN. You mentioned VPN already. People can buy private VPN accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense for people on the call today? Would it make sense for some people to consider, because they may be working from home for a while and they're, you know, feeling particularly vulnerable, to look into getting, if their company doesn't already have a VPN connection, getting their own VPN connection? Is that expensive? Is it difficult?
No, it's not. And again, it pertains to your communication back to the server in your office. You know, listen, we've all been on websites that allow you to get into the website or past a paywall just by entering a username and a password through the internet portal, the web page, the homepage of the website. That's not the way you want to be logging into your your work server. You want to be logging in through a virtual private network. And again, there are free accounts available on many of these portals. You know, again, I mentioned Go to My PC and LogMeIn, TeamViewer is another one. There are free accounts available. There are also even more robust paid-for accounts available. Remember, though, just a key point, you know, that just is securing the connection between your computer and your server. If your home laptop or desktop is infested with malware and bad guys are watching what you're doing on your screen as you are watching what you're doing on your screen, having that secure tunnel to your office is kind of beside the point because they're in your computer to begin with. Same with your server too. So just distinguish between, you know, kind of the if I, you know, to use a crude analogy, the telephone handset and the lines between the point of communications.
You mentioned WTA2 a couple of times.
WP as in Peter, WPA2.
Oh, sorry. What is it?
It's a communications protocol, which is a more secure communications protocol that most commercial are enabled to support. Most of the, many times it's, you know, it's by default, but that needs to be checked. Again, your home internet service provider's homepage probably gives you the best guide to how to configure your password and the methodology of communication that your home router is using.
Joseph, I had a quick question, and then we can open it up for questions. So in terms of, because a lot of our constituency, most of our constituency are in-house lawyers, some at, you know, medium to large size legal departments. What responsibilities do you feel that the legal department has if they have the resources to help their lawyers have a secure work from home platform? Are there recommendations that you would make to GCs to help lawyers who might not be tech savvy in order to be able to feel comfortable that they are securing their company's data?
Sure. Yeah, the best examples that I've seen of success in this area, and I represent a number of large law firms as their chief data privacy and security counsel, the best collaboration, the best examples I've seen are good collaboration between the key stakeholders at the law firm, whether that's the managing partner or executive committee or the GC. If it's a mega large law firm, they have GCs, and the chief technology person at that law firm. And maybe the law firm's big enough to have a chief information security officer, maybe not. Maybe they just have an office manager. Maybe they use a third-party service provider for technical security. But really what needs to happen is two things. One is those two people, the person in charge of, kind of running the law firm and the person who's responsible for managing the technology need to have a conversation about what the company, what the law firm needs, what makes the most sense, and then come up with a plan on how to deploy that to the staff. And remember, it's not just lawyers, it's staff, right. Which includes secretaries, paralegals, office managers, interns, summer associates, right? I mean, externs. I mean, anyone that has access to the firm network needs to be included with that umbrella. And then they also need to have an incident response plan so that if something does happen, people aren't running around trying to figure out what to do. Again, maybe you have those resources in terms of legal expertise inside your company, maybe you don't, but the key point is to figure out where your legal and technical, not just technical, but your legal and technical risks are, come up with a plan on how to address those risks, deploy compensating controls, roll it out, test it, audit, train it on it, and then be prepared for when something inevitably goes wrong, as something inevitably will go wrong because people are people and people make mistakes.
Right. Perfect. That's great information.
So we have a question in the chat window.
Very good.
Open the mics. Can you make a recommendation for laptop virus/malware scanners?
So first of all, I generally am, product agnostic and don't typically recommend them, but the general enterprise ones, WebRoot, McAfee, Malwarebytes, those are all names of popular products that people use. I really just encourage you to do research on that subject.
We probably need to wrap up in about 3 minutes, so we probably have time for one more question if anyone has a question.
Let's unmute them.
Oh, good idea. I will unmute all. Last time we did that, there was kind of an explosion of background noise.
We got to take a chance sometimes.
We're taking a chance. So I think everyone's unmuted now. So unless you've muted yourself. So does anyone have a last question for Joseph?
If no one else does, I do. I use Outlook because I can use it on my phone and on my computer, and it's pretty seamless. And I'd rather use something else. And someone has said, well, you shouldn't use that on your phone. That's a bad idea. Is there anything to that?
Microsoft Outlook through an app on your phone?
Yes.
Generally relatively secure. Configure all the security settings to maximum security. Have a complex password. Here's one thing too. If you're using an iPhone or iDevice, just a practical tip. Many of you have deployed, either facial recognition or thumb fingerprint recognition. I'm old school. I still use the 6-digit password. It's a lot harder to get into. Also, passwords, remember, are testimonial. So you cannot be compelled under the Fifth Amendment to provide a passcode. You can be compelled to provide a thumbprint. And I don't expect you, Ms. Brawls, to get arrested anytime soon. But if you are, the kind of digital facial lineups where they just hover the iPhone over the people waiting for it to recognize the face and unlock. So have a robust password. I think most defaults will not let you do 6 ones in a row. Have a complex digital password, 6 if it allows you to, truly random numbers that'll be known only to you.
That's great advice. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but Joseph, thank you so much. A wealth of information. David, as always, you're a wonderful co-host. We do these monthly, so we'll be back next month, hopefully pretty soon. Many of us will be back at our physical offices, but I think the learning we have here is applicable even beyond the current situation. So thanks again. We will be posting this video to www.inthehouse.org. So feel free to visit us there and learn more about what we do and look at our videos going back to, I think, what is it, August of 2018. So we're approaching our 2-year anniversary this summer in terms of these monthly broadcasts. We've had some of the, really the great minds of this in this important area of the law and technology. So thanks again, Joseph, and everybody, please stay safe out there. one last takeaway, I urge you to, if you haven't already adapted your in-house legal practice to be more technologically savvy, this is a wonderful time to do that. We're all stuck at home. Many of us are saving 2 hours in commute time every day. Use that extra time. Use it to think about best practices around cybersecurity, enrich your mind, improve your in-house practice, stay in touch with your close colleagues and peers. So try to see the silver linings in this very difficult time. But thank you again, Joseph, and I look forward to seeing everybody next month for this
Thanks, Chris.
broadcast. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.